Obviously, we are kicking it off tonight, Jordan, with a recruiting update. Clemson is coming off a huge official visit weekend. Our big summer official visit weekend is in the books this past weekend. But before we dive into what happened in the official visit weekend and some of the dividends that we expect to come, we got to talk about a couple commits that Clemson has gotten this week. The first of this week coming in younger brother of Sammy Brown, linebacker for the Clemson Tigers. Max Brown commits to Clemson, the first commit of the 2027 class. Linebacker, 6'1", 214 pounds, obviously out of Jefferson, Georgia, same high school his brother played for, and he commits to the Tigers. I saw Sammy Brown tweet out that he's a pretty good recruiter himself. So I guess Sammy Brown officially got his first recruit to commit to the Tigers. Your reaction to Max Brown shutting it down and giving his verbal commitment to the Tigers, first of the 2027 class?
You know, in the recruiting landscape, there's always, especially nowadays with the developments of NIL and all of that, it's recruiting has definitely been as wild as it's been, in the history of the sport. So anytime you get a guy that's like a recruitment where it's basically a layup, you celebrate them. This was not a surprise to anybody at all.
No.
And, I think you got to celebrate those when you get them, because they don't come as often. And even at a program like Clemson that does so well at developing relationships and cultivating them and ultimately, parlaying those into actual commitments and signings. But nowadays with all the money that's flying around, it's just you don't get those guys that often anymore. So, this is a really good get, not just because it was you have a prior relationship with that family, and obviously
Right.
they have a lot of Clemson ties in general, which helped you land his older brother. But you're getting a really, really good football player first and foremost. And 6'1", 214. He's not as physically imposing as his brother was, but again, he also has a year to continue to develop physically. But I think he's just as instinctive. He's a phenomenal athlete. You see the lineage there. I think he's a great fit for what this defense is going to be under Tom Allen. And he's a great cornerstone, a great first commit in that 2027 class, because he's going to be a guy that other kids are going to watch and follow. I mean, the Brown family in the state of Georgia, they have a lot of pull, and their name carries a lot of weight. So, it's a massive get, just like it was landing Sammy. So I'm excited and glad that Max, pulled the trigger, because it seemed like that was where it was trending. He was even before his commitment, he was teasing, when he came to Clemson for the Dabo Sweeney camp, and he's taking pictures and all that, and posting pictures with his brother. It seemed very, very clear where this was headed. So yeah, you got to enjoy the layups when you get them, because
Absolutely.
This was the definition of a layup.
Yeah, this was absolutely a layup. I think most everybody thought that even if you didn't think he was going to commit right now, you knew probably that Max Brown was going to be a Clemson Tiger when his time came. And you mentioned his size and his development so far. I mean, he's still got a lot of football in front of him before he even arrives on campus at Clemson. I'm assuming he's going to probably be an early enrollee. So the spring practice of 2027 right there. He's just heading into his junior year of high school football. He's got so much football left in front of him in high school to develop, and he's going to get developed. His dad, produces a really good product there, and obviously is going to produce another great linebacker in Max Brown. So to your point, yes, it is a layup, but it feels good anyway because of the caliber of player that he will end up being by the time it's all said and done and he signs on the dotted line and officially dons that Tiger uniform. He will be a very highly recruited, well, I don't know about highly recruited guy, but he will be a highly thought of guy in the recruiting rankings, I think, and he's gonna be a great player. So, and I'm sure he'll have some big shoes to fill from bigger brother Sammy when his time comes to get on the field for the Tigers. So, great first commitment for the 2027 class. I guess we'll call Max Brown our cornerstone of the 2027 class right now, and he can start recruiting out there for the 2027 class and try to get some guys on board with him as well. But let's go ahead and shift the focus from 2027 to 2026, Jordan. And one of the guys that we talked about heading into the official visit weekend last week's show was Leo Delaney, a big-time offensive lineman. Matt Luke has been recruiting this guy extremely hard out of Providence Day. Yes, we finally get a recruit out of Providence Day in Charlotte, North Carolina. And couldn't be any bigger than this guy and Leo Delaney, physically and from just a recruiting ranking standpoint as well. Stands at 6'6", 290 pounds, 4-star recruit, number 5 in the state, number 5 in his position, and 62 nationally ranked at the offensive tackle position. Your thoughts on Leo Delaney? I know this is one of your guys that one of our commenters asked last week who you could see committing out of this official visit weekend, and you mentioned that Leo Delaney might be a guy that Clemson could potentially get to shut his recruitment down. However, we did think that he would go on to visit Penn State and, you know, the other official visits that he had laid on, but that wasn't the case. Clearly, Clemson sealed the deal with this official visit weekend. They impressed during the elite retreat, and Dabo, Sweeney, and company sealed the deal this past weekend, and we officially have 4-star Leo Delaney on board. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. It's nice to get a Providence Day kid after last. I mean, and not only did you get one this class, you got two, and as of course, because you also have Gordon Sellers, his teammate at wide receiver. So like, that's nice to break that curse. And then more importantly, you're getting one of the best offensive linemen in the country. I mean, I think Leo, from a profile standpoint, I think he's a guy that could flex and play tackle. I think he could play guard if you needed him to. I think his length certainly would serve him to play tackle. I'm interested to see kind of how Clemson views him, when he gets to campus. But I'm kind of the belief when a guy has that kind of length, that you stick him out and tackle and you let him work until it doesn't work, and then if he needs to make a change, you move him inside. But I don't know. I'm not Matt Luke, so I don't know exactly what his plan is for him. But again, you're getting a phenomenal football player. I think the length and the physicality, I think it stands out on tape.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to project as one of the highest ceiling type of players, but I think he's really well refined at his age and size right now. He's a guy that could come in and potentially play early, kind of similar to Chancellor Barkley. I don't think that I think those two are very similar in terms of just they're both ready to play right. More ready to play than a lot of the other players in this class.
I mean, real quick, I don't mean to cut you off, but you mentioned Chancellor Barkley, and we're talking about Leo Delaney. How about those two guys being the highest rated recruits in the 2026 class right now? And when you think about the list of recruits that Clemson has verbal commits from right now, that's saying a lot. The fact that it's 2 offensive linemen leading the charge as far as ratings in the class, when's the last time you could say something like that at Clemson? It's been a while. So shout out to Matt Luke. And he's bringing in these mammoth beasts, man. Like this offensive line's going to look real good getting off the bus. I can tell you that for as long as Matt Luke's going to be here.
Yeah. It was cool to see his commitment live, even though you had to wait like 40 plus minutes because 24/7 Sports used it as bait to watch their entire college football show. And then they gave him a little segment at the end to commit after everybody was tuned in thinking he was going to commit at at 4 o'clock. But regardless of that, regardless of the clickbait, I get, they're a media company. They got to do what they got to do. It was cool to see. And, obviously he cited the culture and all the things that, stuck out to him. And I mean, this official visit was really a needle mover because, coming into the weekend, I wouldn't have said he was a Clemson lean, because throughout his recruitment, Tennessee at one point had a lot of momentum that kind of faded. But
Right.
really, the two teams that were Clemson's chief competition were one Michigan and two Penn State. And, they both carried momentum in that recruitment at different points. But this official visit was the needle mover, like the biggest needle mover for him. And the fact that they were able to get him to shut it down was it's massive, man. But
yeah, those teams you mentioned, they don't even get official visits. They didn't even get that far. So, there's something to be said there.
Exactly. I mean, and two Big Ten schools, and Michigan in particular, that's produced at a high level at offensive line. I mean, I think that says a lot about what Matt Luke has brought to this program. I mean, just this offensive line class right now, and you still have a couple of big fish that you're still in it for.
Right.
This is the best collection of offensive line talent I've seen committed to Clemson ever.
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident saying that there's not another class that comes to mind that even comes close. Just the caliber of player. You got what is it? 5 top 250 offensive linemen, and Braden Williams is a really highly regarded 3-star. Like, I think that says a lot. It says a ton about what Matt Luke has brought to this program from just a recruiting standpoint, and it's been different than kind of how Clemson has gone about recruiting offensive line in the past. I mean, Matt Luke has not been afraid to, like, he's went out and cast a wide net. He's gone after it, and he's really hit the trail hard. He hasn't been very shy about getting guys on campus. I mean, because that's not even mentioning guys like Carter Scruggs, who I'll talk about in a minute. And Kenny Ogboko was in town. Darius Gray was in town. Like you had a lot of talent, not just committed, but talent that you are actively recruiting, and that's just different from how Clemson has done it at other positions. Where they have their select group of guys. This is obviously the emphasis this cycle was bringing in a generational. Especially in the context of this program's history, a generational offensive line class, because this is a great year to do it. And there's a lot of talented players out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this offensive line haul from Matt Luke is you can see the tide that has turned since we brought Matt Luke on board, and this is kind of something to kind of lean into what me and you have had discussions both on the show and off the show about, how special Clemson's run was, right, for those 6 years of consecutive playoff runs, and, how special the Dabo Swinney era has been. But the one position group that we've never really been able to be elite at is the offensive line. And those days seem to be behind us. Matt Luke is going to produce an elite level offensive line, I feel like, as long as he's here at Clemson. The recruits are piling in. The guys that he's getting on campus are not guys that Clemson could have gotten otherwise. And I know that's high praise for a coach and kind of making him a little bit bigger than the program, but it's honestly true. His pedigree that he brought into Clemson, of the guys that he's produced and sent to the NFL, is the reason that Clemson is getting the guys that they are on campus, and not only getting them on campus, but getting them to commit. There's been an entire wholesale shift within the offensive line group from the day that he stepped on Clemson's campus, with just the recruits he had in the building already, but the guys that he's adding now. I mean, it's exciting to think about what Clemson's offensive line can become and be consistent year after year with Matt Luke at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, because in years past, even just one of these guys would have been the cornerstone.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been like
the line group.
Yeah,
you've got multiple, you got several of them, and that's exciting. Like, these are and it's not just the guys that they're undersized, but but Clemson will develop them, and we'll figure out these are guys that otherwise would have gone to, big time SEC and Big Ten programs that produce high caliber offensive line talent.
And you're snatching them away from these programs, and these programs are wanting these players. They're going after these guys. They're offering these guys a bunch of money to come play for their program, but instead these guys are obviously they're getting paid from Clemson as well. I'm not saying Clemson's out here just selling hopes and dreams and Paul Journey and stuff like that. No, they're giving these players some money as well. Maybe not as much as a Michigan or Penn State or something like that, but they're definitely making some money. Make no mistake about it. But as you mentioned, the guys that you're landing now, it's a complete 180 from before. Before, Clemson's whole MO on the offensive line was, we're going to take, like you mentioned, these undersized guys, and we're going to grow them up for 2 and 3 years, and then hopefully they'll be ready to step in and play some meaningful football, right? That was the Clemson recipe at offensive line for years and years and years. And now we've done a complete 180 on that, and we're bringing in the right size and the right athleticism. And a lot of these guys although they're big, they're versatile at the same time. And that's going to be key in a Garrett Riley offense as well.
100%.
So exciting news. Max Brown, Leo Delaney, both commits out of obviously the football camp that Max Brown was involved in, and then Leo Delaney coming off of the official visit weekend. But we still got some recruiting stuff to talk about, Jordan. Obviously, everybody in the comment section is wondering what happened at the official visit weekend. We clearly don't have as much momentum as we did out of the elite retreat, right? I think we rattled off 8 commits immediately following the elite retreat, or the week or so after the elite retreat. Clearly, we're not having that sort of success heading out of the official visit weekend, but I don't think that means that the official visit weekend wasn't a success. And I think you're going to get into that with a couple of guys and some guys that we're looking forward to. I know the comment section has already asked several times, who do we see committing? Who's close to committing? Who did we make a lot of ground up with at the official visit weekend? So from your perspective, everything you've read and heard from your sources, how did the official visit weekend going? And who are these players that Clemson Tiger fans should be paying attention to as the weeks go on after the official visit weekend, and guys that could potentially be committing in, the next weeks and months that are to come?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this official visit weekend didn't, produce the string of commitments that we kind of became used to after the past couple of years. But a lot of that is because you've had more guys, in the boat already when the weekend rolled around. So I've got to keep that in mind. But from all reports, anywhere you read, I mean, the official visit weekend was a overwhelming success. And I think you moved the needle for a lot of guys that were on campus, a lot of guys that I think would be phenomenal additions. I'll hit on a couple of them. I know the big fish that everybody's been talking about is linebacker Tyler Atkinson. I think it was a visit that went as well as it possibly could have. And I think Clemson has put themselves in a position where I think they'll be in they'll be in that final group when it's all said and done. I'm not saying that they should be considered the favorite, that they're the leader, but there are a lot of good things going on that seem to indicate that Tyler Atkinson will be. It'll be hard for Tyler Atkinson to say no to Clemson when it's all said and done, and you have a legitimate shot in this one. Of course, he announced today that he'll be at Oregon this weekend. This is not a shock to anybody. We both said, I think last week, that expecting Tyler Atkinson to come in and shut things down over the weekend was probably wishful thinking. So it doesn't change how I feel about the recruitment. I think Clemson is in a position where they'll be able to be competitive from an NIL standpoint. And I think that all the other things it's about setting yourself apart from the other contenders. Obviously, Oregon is going to be involved. Georgia, of course, USC. So, I think you got to you got to hold the course, and you got to keep reminding him about what appealed to him about Clemson, and I think you'll be there at the finish line when it's all said and done. And so it'll be a game of inches though, but I think Clemson is legitimately in that contention to land his commitment. So I think that's about all you can ask for with a recruitment as high level and high profile as that is. I mean, you've put all your chips into his basket. That essentially with Caleb Gordon, you basically essentially scratched him off your board, and you let him go, and I think he committed to Arkansas this week. So you've made a statement that you are our priority. You are the priority, and that's what you have to do. And I think that's what it's going to take in order to land his commitment. So I think Clemson did a great job, like I said, and we'll see kind of as he goes through his visits. We'll definitely learn more about what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it was a great official visit weekend. Tons of guys on campus, and Clemson always does these things right. Like they go about it. I know every university and program, they have their ways of doing these official visit weekends, right? I mean, Clemson, in my opinion, does it really well, right? They take a day, they go out to the lake, they're having fun outside of football, right? They do a couple bonding things, right? They go to Dabo's house and they're playing basketball and they're talking trash and they're shooting hoops with each other and having a good time, right? Larry Fitzgerald was at Dabo's house, right? All sorts of big name people there, big recruits there. It was a successful weekend, and then it's always that closing speech, right, that you hear about from Dabo. That he always does, and just kind of outlines the program and the philosophy and why they do things certain ways. And he's obviously going to hit with the parents in the room, right? Dabo's going to hit big on the education piece, right? He's going to talk about the graduation rate. He's going to talk about the retention rate. He's going to talk about when we offer you a scholarship at Clemson, you're here until graduation, right? He's going to outline all those things, and I think it resonates with the right guys, right? And that's who the guys that end up committing to Clemson. And yes, there's an NIL piece to all of this, and that can't be understated. And you're going to bat with a lot of these big programs. You mentioned Michigan and Penn State and Tennessee and Alabama, and you're recruiting against all the big guys, right? Texas, whoever you want to name. But Clemson does it in a unique way, and I think that's why they have so much success out of these official visit weekends, because they approach it in my opinion, a very holistic way, right? Yes, there's a huge football component to the weekend, but it's not just about that. And I think that's one of the things that helps resonate with some of these athletes and their families when they're on campus. Plus, as we mentioned before, there's just something in those hills, right? So when you get somebody on Clemson's campus who have never been there before, it's a beautiful campus. You got the mountains. You got the lakes. It's a very picturesque place and a small town feel. And I think that helps out as well.
Absolutely, 100%. And they always tend to do a good job. A couple of other names that I think that obviously Clemson fans are going to want to keep an eye on. I mentioned Carter Scruggs earlier in the show, as that he's kind of the apple of the remaining guys on your board that I think Clemson has the best shot of landing. I think this weekend was really, really just another reminder of why, of what draws him to Clemson. I think it's still up in the air about, whether he's going to make it through all of his official visits. This is kind of wait and see, but I think Clemson is, I would, based off of just my gut feeling is I think that Clemson is probably the leader right now, but that doesn't mean he's going to shut it down. Doesn't mean official visit weekend, the official visits aren't going to continue and maybe change his perspective. He's a guy that's definitely going to want to take his time and consider everything. But I think Carter Scruggs is, of all the guys especially on the offensive line that Clemson has remaining on the board. I think he's far and away the best shot of also being in the class. A couple of other names that, they were kind of moving the needle for. Safety Blake Stewart. We talked about him a good bit. He came on campus with Tylen Wilson and Joey O'Brien. I think this was a eye-opening visit for him in a lot of ways. So I think you got to keep that in mind. And that doesn't mean I think you're going to land him, but I think I'm keeping an eye on him. I'm also, of course, keeping an eye on Joey O'Brien, but of course he's got visits to, the likes of Penn State and other programs as well. I think Penn State is Clemson's chief competition there. And I think Tylen Wilson is probably the biggest long shot. But getting him on campus was a big deal as well. Of course, on the defensive line, obviously the two main guys that you're looking at, defensive lineman Bryce Perry-White and defensive end Dre Quinn. I think they both had really, really great visits. And Bryce Perry-White, I keep saying it, you got to win this one. But Dre Quinn as well, because now at this point he's basically your only guy on the board as far as defensive end, other than J.R. Hardrick, who I feel pretty strongly will be in the boat here pretty soon. So that's you need to solidify that defensive line class. You can't just have a class of Cam Cody. As much as I like him as a recruit, he can't be your only guy. So I think it's been kind of slower on the defensive line standpoint. But if you land Bryce Perry-White and Dre Quinn along with J.R. Hardrick, that definitely changes the complexion of this class a lot. So of course I'm keeping an eye on those guys as well. Anybody else I really wanted to hit on? Devin Fitzgerald, of course, came. I was kind of skeptical coming into the weekend about whether or not he would end up in the class, but he did get the offer. It seems like Clemson is would be willing to take a fourth receiver, and I think he would be a good complement to what this group is. I think he had a great visit, and he's the physical. Big outside guy, not as twitchy as some of the the other guys you have committed, but he's definitely a guy that's going to play on the outside, and he's kind of similar to what you wanted in Cedarian Morgan, but obviously not the same athlete, but definitely the ex receiver body type of player, and so. I think I wasn't sure whether he was going to. Obviously Clemson wasn't going to bring him on campus if they weren't going to offer him. But I wasn't sure whether or not it would be something that Clemson would push for, as far as maybe trying to get him to commit or anything like that. But it seems like they really like him, and I think he would be a good fourth addition to this wide receiver class. So
you saw a couple Clemson players tweeting out that they got to spend some time with Larry Fitzgerald and kind of pick his brain a little bit and talk to him. So that was pretty cool as well.